Oscar walked slowly through the lower alleys of the city. It was late, and the sky above the giant towers looked more like a sheet of smoke than open air. The streets were almost empty. Only the sound of dripping pipes and the echo of his own steps followed him. In his hands, he carried a small bag of leftover food, the kind he always brought for stray dogs. It was his habit, something he did quietly, without telling anyone. The dogs here were thin, dirty, and scared of people. Most citizens ignored them or kicked them away. But Oscar, even after a long day of work, always made time to feed them. He knew life was cruel, and if he could give a little kindness, even to animals, it mattered. He walked deeper into the service alleys, where the neon lights did not reach. The smell of oil and smoke filled the air. He whistled softly, a signal the strays had come to recognize. Normally, after a few seconds, he would see glowing eyes and wagging tails coming closer. But tonight, nothing moved. Oscar frowned and set the bag down on the ground. "Come on, boys," he whispered. "Food's here." Still no sound, only the silence of the alley. It was strange, almost too quiet. Then he heard it. Not the growl of dogs, but something softer, a trembling sound, like a whimper, mixed with a breath held too long. He froze. The sound came from the shadows between two broken crates. Slowly, Oscar stepped closer, his heart beating faster. He expected a dog hiding there, maybe injured, but when he bent down, he did not see fur. He saw eyes, two pairs, glowing faintly in the dark. Large, wide eyes, staring at him with fear and hunger. He pulled back, shocked. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. The figures shifted, and the weak light revealed them. Not dogs, not humans. Two young alien girls, thin as bones, crouched together for warmth. Their skin was pale, almost shining under the flicker of the alley lamp. Their clothes were torn rags, dirty and half-burnt. One girl held the other tightly, as if protecting her. They were shaking, and their eyes begged without words. Oscar felt his chest tighten. For a moment, he did not know what to do. He had heard stories, rumors of escaped alien slaves in the city. Most people feared them. The authorities called them property, not people, and anyone caught hiding one could be punished. But looking at these two starving sisters, Oscar could not turn away. He slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of bread. The sisters flinched, their bodies pressing tighter into the corner. "It's okay," Oscar whispered, keeping his voice soft. "I'm not going to hurt you." He placed the bread on the ground and pushed it gently toward them. For a long moment, they did not move. Then the younger sister, weaker and trembling, crawled forward. Her hands shook as she grabbed the bread. She sniffed it, then devoured it as if she had not eaten in days. The older one watched carefully, still wary of Oscar. Her eyes stayed locked on him, full of mistrust. Oscar slowly sat on the ground, showing he meant no harm. "You're safe," he whispered. The sisters exchanged a quick glance, and then the older one pulled the younger back, afraid again. Oscar's heart ached. He wanted to help them, but he also knew the danger. If anyone found out, the authorities would come for him too. Still, leaving them here felt like leaving them to die. He could not walk away. Just then, the sound of heavy boots echoed at the far end of the alley. Oscar stiffened. Voices carried in the distance, sharp and metallic. The kind of voices used by patrol officers. The sisters froze, their glowing eyes wide with terror. Oscar looked around. If these men were searching for the girls, then time was running out. His breath quickened. He whispered quickly, "Stay quiet, don't move." The sisters clung to each other, hiding deeper in the shadows. Oscar moved to block the view, standing between them and the approaching lights. The bag of food still lay on the ground beside him. He bent down, pretending to be just another poor worker feeding strays. The patrol voices grew closer, mixed with the hum of scanning drones. Red beams of light swept across the walls, searching. Oscar's heart pounded. He knew if the drones scanned behind him, they would see the girls, and then everything would be over. One of the red lights suddenly landed on him. The beam stopped, locked on his body. A metallic voice crackled through the air. "Citizen, identify yourself." Oscar swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. He raised his hands slowly, praying they would not look behind him. But in the corner of his eye, he saw the younger alien girl trembling. Her small fingers dug into the older sister's arm, and then a tiny cough escaped her lips, soft but loud enough in the silence. The patrol lights shifted, turning toward the shadows where the sisters hid. Oscar's blood ran cold. The patrol light swept closer, bright red and sharp like a blade. Oscar's mind raced, his pulse hammering in his ears. If the beam reached the crates behind him, it would expose the sisters. And once the patrol saw them, there would be no escape. He acted fast, dropping to one knee and pretending to dig into his food bag. "I'm just feeding strays," he said loudly, his voice steady though his chest burned with fear. The metallic drone paused, its red light freezing on him. A cold voice repeated, "State your ID." Oscar slowly pulled a worn plastic card from his pocket and held it up. The machine scanned it with a buzzing sound. The patrol officer's boots clanged closer. One man appeared from the shadows, armored chest plate reflecting dull blue light. His eyes narrowed at Oscar. "What are you doing here at this hour?" the officer demanded. Oscar forced a shrug. "Dogs don't care what time it is, sir. They get hungry." The officer's gaze slid toward the crates, and Oscar's stomach turned to ice. He shifted his body just enough to block the view, pretending to adjust the food bag. Seconds stretched, long and heavy. Finally, the officer grunted, "Waste of food, if you ask me." He waved the drone on, the lights swept away, and their boots clanged deeper into the alley. Oscar held his breath until the sound of their voices faded. Only then did he dare to glance back. The sisters were still crouched in the shadows, their bodies shaking. The younger one's glowing eyes brimmed with tears. The older one pressed a hand tightly over her mouth, afraid another sound might slip out. Oscar exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. "That was close," he whispered, almost to himself. The sisters didn't move. Their fear was carved into their faces. Oscar knelt down, keeping his voice calm. "Listen, you can't stay here. They'll come back, maybe with more drones." The older sister hissed softly, a protective sound, as if warning him not to come closer. Her eyes were sharp, full of mistrust. But Oscar only pulled out another piece of food and placed it gently on the ground. "Take it," he said, "but you need more than bread. You need safety." The younger one crawled forward again, snatched the food, and ate hungrily. Oscar watched her ribs move with every breath, too thin, too fragile. He clenched his jaw, a war inside him. He knew the smart choice was to walk away, to let the sisters disappear into the city's shadows. But the image of them starving, hunted like animals, clawed at his heart. Finally, he sighed, "All right, come with me." The older one stiffened, clutching her sister's hand tighter. "I won't hurt you," Oscar said gently. "If you stay here, you'll be caught, you'll die." For a long moment, silence filled the alley. Then, slowly, the younger sister tugged at her elder's hand, whispering something in a language Oscar couldn't understand. The older one's shoulders sagged, as if exhausted. At last, she gave the smallest nod. Oscar stood, looked both ways down the alley, then motioned for them to follow. He led them through narrow passages, ducking under broken pipes, stepping over trash heaps. Every sound of boots or drone hum made the sisters freeze, but Oscar urged them forward. Finally, they reached a rusted door, hidden behind hanging wires. Oscar shoved it open and guided them inside. His apartment was small, dark, and cluttered. A single bed, a broken table, and a dim lamp. Not much, but at least it was hidden from patrol eyes. The sisters stepped in cautiously, looking around with wide, uncertain eyes. The younger one sniffed the air, as if testing if this place was safe. The older one kept close to the door, ready to run. Oscar went to the kitchen corner, opened a small container, and placed whatever food he had on the table. "Eat," he said softly. The younger sister rushed forward, grabbing a handful, stuffing her mouth quickly. The older one approached slowly, her movements sharp and guarded. She picked up a piece, sniffed it, then gave it to her sister first. Only after watching her eat did she take a bite herself. Oscar sat on the edge of the bed, watching them. He noticed scars on their wrists like old chains had been there. His throat tightened, anger building in his chest. What kind of people could do this to children? But before he could speak, the older sister suddenly turned to him. Her glowing eyes narrowed, her voice low and broken in human words. "Why help?" Oscar blinked, caught off guard. He had no easy answer. After a pause, he said quietly, "Because no one else will." The sisters exchanged a glance. For the first time, Oscar thought he saw something in their eyes besides fear, a flicker of fragile hope. But before the moment could grow, a loud beep echoed outside. Oscar jumped to his feet, moving to the window. On the giant city screens, a new broadcast glared across the night sky. A voice thundered through the speakers. "Attention citizens, 2 escaped alien subjects are loose. Within the lower districts, report any suspicious activity. A reward of 20,000 credits will be given for their capture." Oscar's blood ran cold. The sisters froze, terror washing over their faces. Their hiding place was no longer safe. The broadcast echoed across the entire block. Every glowing screen on the towers repeated the same message. 2 alien fugitives on the run. Reward for capture, 20,000 credits. The words cut through the night like blades. Oscar's stomach twisted. Now every greedy eye in the city would be searching. He turned from the window quickly. The sisters stood close together, frozen like statues. The younger one clutched her sister's arm so tightly her fingers turned white. The older one's breathing was sharp, fast, her eyes darting to the door. They looked like cornered animals. Oscar raised his hands slowly, trying to calm them. "Don't panic. You're safe here for now," he whispered, but his own voice betrayed the fear in his chest. A sudden crash echoed from the hallway outside. The sisters jumped, their glowing eyes wide. Oscar motioned for silence. He crept to the door and pressed his ear against it. Voices, neighbors, already talking about the reward. 20,000. "Do you know what I could buy with that?" One man laughed. Another voice muttered, "If they're hiding around here, we'll find them." Oscar's heart pounded. They couldn't stay here, not with greedy people listening for the slightest clue. He spun back to the sisters. "We have to go," he whispered. The younger one whimpered softly, shaking her head. The older one pulled her close, as if refusing to move. Oscar stepped forward, lowering his voice to a plea. "If you stay, you'll be taken, you'll be chained again. Trust me, I'll get you out." The sisters exchanged a look. The older one's mistrust burned in her eyes. But finally, she gave a single, sharp nod. Oscar grabbed his coat, pulled up the hood, and motioned for them to follow. They slipped into the hallway, moving silently. Every step seemed louder than thunder in Oscar's ears. They passed doors where voices whispered and eyes peeked from cracks. Greed buzzed in the air. Everyone wanted the reward. Oscar guided the sisters down the back stairwell. The smell of rust and mold filled the air. The younger one nearly tripped, but Oscar caught her quickly. "Careful," he whispered. She blinked at him with wide eyes, surprised by his gentleness. They reached the bottom floor and pushed out into the night. The city's underbelly stretched before them. Pipes, steam vents, trash heaps stacked high. The neon signs above flickered, throwing broken light into the shadows. Oscar moved quickly, keeping them pressed to the walls. Every patrol drone in the district was already sweeping the streets. Red lights scanned every corner. The reward announcement repeated again and again. They crept through a narrow alley. Oscar pushed them behind broken crates when a drone passed overhead. The sisters crouched close, trembling. The younger one whispered something in her own language. The older one hushed her, pressing a hand over her mouth. Oscar looked at them, his heart twisting. They were just children running for their lives in a city that wanted to sell them. The drone hovered, its red beam slicing through the air. It stopped, scanning, the beam passing just inches from Oscar's face. He didn't move, didn't even breathe. Finally, the drone drifted away, the hum fading. Oscar exhaled, his body shaking. He turned back to the sisters. We need to move faster. They reached the edge of the old service tunnels. A rusted gate blocked the entrance, half buried in trash. Oscar kicked the lock until it snapped. He pulled the gate open with a screech of metal. The sound echoed, too loud. The sisters flinched, eyes darting toward the street. Oscar motioned them inside, quickly. The tunnels were dark, wet, and cold, but they were safer than the open streets. As they stepped inside, the younger sister stumbled again. Oscar caught her gently. She was burning hot, her skin feverish. He frowned, whispering, "She's sick." The older one looked at him with sharp eyes, then slowly lowered her head. Her silence was an answer. The younger one was weak, maybe dying without proper care. Oscar clenched his fists. He had no medicine, no resources, only scraps of food. But he couldn't abandon them, not now. Not after seeing their eyes, their scars. He swore under his breath, "I'll find a way." They moved deeper into the tunnels. The air grew colder, dripping water, echoing off stone. The sisters stayed close behind him, their glowing eyes the only light. For a moment, Oscar thought maybe they had escaped danger. Maybe the patrols wouldn't come down here. But then he heard it, the heavy metallic footsteps of soldiers, entering the tunnels from the other side. The sound grew louder, closer. Red lights began sweeping across the tunnel walls. The sisters gasped softly, clinging to each other. Oscar's fist tightened, his breath steadying. He had only seconds to decide. Run, fight, or betray the sisters for his own safety. The soldiers rounded the corner, their weapons raised. The red beam swept across the tunnel and landed directly on Oscar's face. The red beam of the soldier's scanner cut through the darkness and locked on Oscar's face. He froze, his body tense, the sisters trembling behind him. The soldiers stepped closer, armored boots echoing across the wet tunnel floor. "Citizen," one barked, "what are you doing down here?" Oscar raised his hands slowly, forcing calm into his voice. "Just a worker," he said. "I heard the broadcast, thought maybe I could check these tunnels for the fugitives, maybe earn the reward." The soldiers studied him carefully, their scanners sweeping over his body. Behind him, the sisters pressed against the wall, holding their breath. The faint glow of their eyes was hidden in the shadows. But if the soldiers turned their lights even slightly, everything would be over. One soldier snorted, another fool chasing credits. He waved his hand, and the scanner light turned away. "Move along, worker, leave this to us." Oscar lowered his hands and nodded quickly, pretending to leave. But inside, his chest was burning. He had just lied to protect two alien girls he had met less than an hour ago. If the soldiers had seen them, he would already be in chains beside them. As the patrol marched deeper into the tunnels, Oscar grabbed the sisters' hands and pulled them down a narrow side path. The older one resisted for a moment, glaring at him with suspicion. But Oscar whispered harshly, "Do you want to be caught? Trust me." Her eyes searched his, sharp and doubtful. Yet, at last, she followed, dragging her younger sister with her. They moved quickly through the maze of tunnels until the sounds of the soldiers faded. Finally, they stopped in a small chamber, the dripping water echoing softly. The sisters sank against the wall, exhausted. Oscar leaned against the opposite side, his heart still racing. For a moment, silence filled the space, broken only by the younger girl's weak breathing. Oscar finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You can't keep hiding like this. They'll search every corner of this city." The older sister's eyes narrowed. She finally spoke in broken human words, her voice sharp. "Why help us? Human not care. Humans sell us." Oscar met her gaze steadily. "I'm not like them." Her expression twisted, filled with pain and anger. She lifted her sleeve and revealed the scars on her wrist. Deep, raw marks where metal cuffs had once cut into her flesh. "Chains, human chains," she spat. Oscar's chest tightened, guilt burning in his heart, even though he was not the one who had hurt her. "I know," he whispered. "I've seen what they do, but I'm not them. I won't chain you, I won't sell you." The older one stared at him, searching for lies. The younger one, weaker and feverish, tugged at her sister's sleeve, whispering something in their own language. Her voice was soft, pleading. The older sister's expression softened for a moment. Then she looked back at Oscar, her eyes still hard but less hostile. Finally, she gave a single nod, the smallest sign of trust. Oscar exhaled in relief. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He crouched near them, pulling out the last of his food. "Eat," he said gently. "You need strength." The younger girl reached forward quickly, while the older one still hesitated. But after a long moment, she allowed herself a small bite. Oscar watched them closely, realizing how fragile they truly were. They weren't monsters, they weren't criminals. They were just children caught in a cruel world. As they ate, Oscar's mind raced. How long could he keep them safe? His apartment was no longer an option. The tunnels weren't safe either. Every screen in the city screamed their description. Every citizen wanted the reward. If he wanted to protect them, he had to think of something else. But before he could speak, the younger sister suddenly coughed violently. Her body shook, and she leaned against her sister for support. Oscar's eyes widened. "She's getting worse," he whispered. The older one held her close, glaring at Oscar as if blaming him. But he shook his head. "She needs medicine or she won't survive." His voice was desperate, pleading. "I can't do this alone. I need to find help." The older sister growled softly, mistrust returning to her eyes. "Help means chains," she hissed. Oscar clenched his fists, frustrated. "Not this time," he said firmly. "I promise." Before the conversation could continue, a sudden noise echoed from deeper in the tunnel. The hum of machines, the metallic clank of boots. The soldiers were returning, this time sweeping the tunnels more carefully. Oscar cursed under his breath. He grabbed the sister's hands again. "We have to move now." They stumbled through the twisting tunnels, the younger girl, struggling to keep pace. The patrol's lights grew brighter behind them. Targets detected, a metallic voice rang out. Red beams sliced across the walls, searching. Oscar's heart pounded as he pulled the sisters around a corner. They pressed against the cold stone, holding their breath. The soldiers' lights grew closer, the sound of boots echoing like drums of doom. Oscar looked at the sisters, their wide, glowing eyes filled with terror. There was no escape route, no safe path left. The only way forward was blocked, and the soldiers were just seconds away from finding them. Oscar's mind spun with desperation. He could surrender. He could run, leaving the sisters behind. Or he could fight. His fist clenched, his jaw tightened. He looked at the sisters once more and made his choice. As the first soldier rounded the corner, Oscar stepped forward into the beam of red light. The red light blinded Oscar as the first soldier stepped into the corner of the tunnel. His weapon hummed, ready to fire. "Citizen," the soldier barked, "step aside." Oscar didn't move. He stood tall, blocking the path, his shadow hiding the sisters pressed against the wall behind him. "I haven't seen anyone," he lied, his voice steady but his heart racing. The soldier narrowed his eyes. The scanner on his wrist beeped and glowed red, detecting movement behind Oscar. "Step away," the soldier growled, raising his weapon. Oscar's fists clenched, his mind screaming at him to run. But he had already made his choice. With a burst of courage, he lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into the soldier's chest. The weapon clattered to the ground, sparks flying. The tunnel echoed with shouts. "Contact! Targets located!" Chaos exploded. Oscar grabbed the soldier's weapon, fired blindly, and a flash of light scattered the others back. The sisters cried out, their glowing eyes wide. "Run!" Oscar shouted, pulling them deeper into the side tunnels. Blaster bolts hissed past, burning holes into the walls. The younger sister stumbled, coughing. The older one dragged her, while Oscar shielded them with his body. They turned corner after corner until at last the sound of soldiers faded. Breathing hard, Oscar pressed them against a wall. His hands shook, his body trembling with adrenaline. The older sister looked at him with disbelief. "You fight for us?" she whispered, her voice broken. Oscar nodded. "I told you, I won't let them take you." The younger girl whimpered, collapsing weakly. Her fever burned hotter, her skin pale and damp. Oscar knelt, panic rushing through him. "She's not going to make it without help," he said. The older one hissed, her mistrust sharp again. "No doctors, no humans, they chain us." Oscar shook his head. "I know a place, not a hospital, but someone who owes me, someone who won't betray us." The older sister's eyes narrowed, torn between fear and hope. Oscar leaned closer, his voice low and fierce. "If you don't trust me, she will die. If you trust me, maybe she has a chance." For a long moment, the tunnel was silent except for the younger girl's ragged breathing. Finally, the older sister gave a trembling nod. "Take us," she whispered. Oscar helped lift the younger girl, her frail body light in his arms. Together, they moved through hidden paths until they reached an old maintenance hatch. With effort, Oscar pried it open, revealing a narrow stairway that led to the upper district. They climbed, careful and quiet, until they reached a hidden doorway at the edge of the city slums. Inside was a small workshop lit by flickering lamps. The smell of metal and oil filled the air. At the center, a woman hunched over a table, welding broken machinery. She looked up sharply as Oscar entered, her goggles reflecting the dim light. "Oscar, what are you doing here? It's dangerous tonight." Her name was Marin, a mechanic who sometimes patched up people as much as machines. Oscar set the younger girl down gently. "Marin, I need your help," he said. Marin's eyes widened as she saw the aliens. "Are you insane? The whole city is hunting them. If someone finds them here, we're all finished." Oscar stepped closer, his voice raw. "She's dying, Marin. Look at her, please." Marin hesitated, torn between fear and compassion. She looked at the younger girl's trembling body, her glowing eyes half closed. Finally, with a heavy sigh, she nodded. "Put her on the table." The older sister clung to her sibling, glaring at Marin with pure mistrust. But Oscar gently pulled her back. "She's here to help." Marin checked the girl's pulse, her breathing, her fever. "She's burning up," Marin muttered. "Infection, starvation, dehydration. She won't last long without treatment." Oscar asked, desperate, "Can you save her?" Marin bit her lip. "I can try, but I'll need supplies, medicine from the upper markets, and those areas are crawling with patrols." The older sister leaned closer, whispering something in her own language. The younger one stirred weakly and pointed with trembling fingers at a small pouch tied around her neck. Oscar opened it and froze. Inside was a small crystal, glowing faintly with strange symbols dancing across its surface. "What is this?" Oscar asked. The older sister's eyes burned into his, her voice sharp and urgent. "Not just sisters, not just slaves. She carries knowledge, a map, a secret they want. That is why they hunt us, not just for chains, but for this." Oscar stared at the crystal, the weight of their words sinking in. This wasn't just about saving 2 lost children anymore. This was bigger, something powerful enough that the entire human empire would kill to get it. Before he could respond, a loud crash shook the building. The workshop door rattled violently, voices shouting outside. "Open up. Patrol inspection." Marin's face turned pale. Oscar spun toward the sisters, panic racing through him. The soldiers had tracked them, and now they were at the door. The pounding on the workshop door grew louder. "Open up. Patrol inspection." The soldiers shouted, their boots heavy against the metal. The walls rattled with each strike. Marin's face turned pale, fear flashing in her eyes. Oscar's stomach dropped. They didn't have much time. "Back room," Marin hissed, pointing toward a small storage area. Oscar grabbed the sisters and hurried them inside. The older one glared at Marin with sharp mistrust, but followed, holding her younger sibling close. Oscar crouched beside them, whispering, "Stay quiet, no matter what happens." The door burst open with a crash. Armored soldiers stormed into the workshop, weapons raised. Marin lifted her hands quickly, playing the frightened civilian. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. The lead officer scanned the room with a red beam. "We're searching for fugitives, 2 alien subjects, dangerous and valuable." Oscar held his breath. The sisters pressed against him. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder in his ears. The soldiers stomped around, overturning tools, smashing crates. One of them stopped near the storage room door. Oscar tightened his grip on a younger sister's hand, ready to fight if the soldier opened it. But the lead officer barked, "Nothing here, move on." The soldiers stepped back, and slowly, the patrol left, slamming the door behind them. For a moment, silence returned. Oscar exhaled shakily, relief flooding his chest. He whispered, "It's okay, they're gone." But then he noticed Marin, standing stiff and pale, her eyes not meeting his. Oscar's relief turned to suspicion. "Marin," he asked slowly, "you didn't tell them, did you?" Her lips trembled, her hands twisting nervously. "I didn't, not yet," she whispered. Oscar's heart sank. "You thought about it," he said coldly. Marin broke, her voice desperate. 20,000 credits, Oscar. Do you know what that could do? I could leave this rotten city, start a new life." The older sister hissed like a cornered animal, stepping between Marin and her younger sibling. Her glowing eyes burned with fury. Oscar raised a hand to calm her, but inside, rage boiled in his own chest. "You owe me, Marin. I trusted you," he snapped. Marin shook her head, guilt and fear battling in her face. "I haven't called them yet, but if they come back, Oscar, I can't stop them." The younger sister groaned weakly, her fever worsening. Oscar turned to Marin, his voice sharp. "Then save her at least. You want redemption? Do this one thing, and maybe you'll sleep at night." Marin's eyes softened, shame flickering in them. She moved quickly to her table, pulling out medicine and tools. She mixed a bitter liquid and handed it to Oscar. "Give her this, it'll bring down the fever, but it won't cure her completely." Oscar helped the younger girl drink, holding her gently. Her trembling eased slightly, her breathing steadied. The older sister watched closely, her mistrust still heavy. But when her siblings' glow brightened faintly, she whispered something soft, almost like thanks. Oscar met her gaze and spoke firmly. "I promised I'd protect you, and I will. But you need to tell me the truth. What's in that crystal? Why do they want it so badly?" The older sister hesitated, then slowly pulled the glowing crystal from the pouch again. Her voice was low, almost reverent. "It is a map. Not just stars, not just planets. It shows safe worlds, hidden from humans. Places where our people can live free. If they capture it, they will destroy them all." Oscar stared at the crystal, the weight of its importance heavy on his chest. This wasn't just about saving 2 sisters anymore. It was about saving an entire people. And somehow, fate had dropped that responsibility into his hands. Before he could respond, alarms blared outside. Red lights flashed through the workshop windows. Marin gasped. "They're back, this time with trackers. They'll tear this place apart." Oscar grabbed the sister's hands, his voice urgent. "Then we run now." But as he moved toward the back exit, Marin's voice stopped him. "Oscar, wait," she said softly, her face filled with conflict. He turned, his eyes hard. "If you betray us, Marin, I swear." She shook her head quickly, tears forming in her eyes. "No, I'll distract them, buy you time. You're right. I owe you, and maybe this is the only way I can make it right." Oscar's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, but there was no time. The soldiers' boots were already stomping outside, weapons ready. Finally, he gave her a sharp nod. "Don't let them catch you." Marin forced a shaky smile. "I never do." Then she ran toward the front door, shouting, drawing the soldiers' attention. The heavy crash of boots followed her voice. Oscar pulled the sisters through the back exit, their glowing eyes reflecting fear and fragile hope. They fled into the night. The city stretched before them, endless, dangerous, and alive with hunters. Oscar knew there was only one place left. The old transport tunnels, long abandoned, leading to the outer gates. If they could reach them, maybe they could escape this cursed city. But as they turned the corner, Oscar froze. A row of armored soldiers already blocked the path, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, his helmet gleaming. And in a cold voice, he said, "Going somewhere." The alley was blocked, armored soldiers standing in formation. Their red scanners swept across the walls, their weapons glowing with deadly charge. Oscar froze, pulling the sisters behind him. The older one hissed like a cornered animal, her glowing eyes fierce. The younger one trembled, too weak to stand, leaning heavily against her sister. The lead officer stepped forward, his voice sharp and cold. "Hand over the fugitives, citizen. Do this, and you will be rewarded. Resist, and you will die with them." Oscar's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, he imagined what 20,000 credits could buy. Freedom from the slums, food, comfort, a life without fear. But then he looked at the sisters, fragile, scarred, trembling, and the thought burned to ash. He shook his head slowly, his voice steady. "They're not fugitives. They're children." The officer sneered. "Children? They're property." He raised his weapon, aiming at the sisters. Oscar stepped in front of them, his arms spread wide. "Then you'll have to go through me." The soldiers laughed, cold and cruel. But Oscar didn't back down. He charged forward with nothing but his fists. The first soldier swung his rifle, but Oscar slammed into him, knocking him against the wall. Energy bolts hissed through the air, scorching the stone. Oscar ducked, grabbed the weapon, and fired wildly, scattering the formation. "Run!" he shouted at the sisters. The older one hesitated, torn between fear and the instinct to protect. But the younger tugged at her arm, whispering weakly. Together, they stumbled toward the shadows. Oscar fought like a man possessed, every strike fueled by desperation. But there were too many. A rifle but slammed into his ribs. Another soldier pinned him against the wall. The officer raised his blaster, its red light aimed at Oscar's head. Before the shot could fire, a sudden flash filled the alley. The crystal in the younger sister's pouch glowed brighter than ever. Symbols swirled in the air, casting light across the walls. The soldiers staggered, shielding their eyes. The older sister grabbed her sibling and shouted words in her alien tongue. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then released a burst of energy. A map of stars filled the night sky above them. Dozens of glowing worlds shone like lanterns. Safe places, hidden places, unreachable by human ships. The soldiers froze, stunned by the sight. Oscar stared in awe, realizing the truth. The crystal wasn't just a map. It was a key, a beacon to lead their people home. The officer roared, "Seize it!" He lunged forward, but Oscar slammed into him, driving both of them to the ground. Pain exploded in Oscar's chest, but he held tight. "Go!" he shouted again, his voice raw and desperate. The sisters looked back, their glowing eyes filled with tears. The older one whispered something, words Oscar didn't understand, but he knew the meaning. Then they ran, vanishing into the dark, following the light of the crystal. The officer snarled, punching Oscar hard. "You're a fool, human," he spat. Oscar coughed, blood on his lips, but a faint smile on his face. "Maybe, but at least I'm not a monster." Sirens wailed in the distance, the city alive with chaos as the crystal's signal spread. Somewhere above, ships stirred, alarms rang. The sisters' light was no longer hidden. It was calling to others, to their kind, to freedom. Oscar closed his eyes for a moment, the sound of boots and shouting fading. He didn't know if he would survive. He didn't know if the sisters would reach safety. But deep in his chest, he felt peace. Because for the first time in years, he had done something that mattered. Far away, in the endless night sky, the stars glowed brighter. And among them, two alien sisters carried hope for an entire people. They would remember the human who chose to fight for them. Not for money, not for reward, but for something greater. For family.